well. Yeah, we're live. I'm not really sure we're live. Something is happening at least, so that's something. Is it doing things it's supposed to be doing? I don't know. Doesn't seem to be doing it. We're doing it here then. Right. So it seems like we are actually live. That's good. So, then there we go. We are sort of live. We're sort of alive. I still have not managed to figure out how we do the whole setting things up properly with tags and stuff, but not. That is okay. Because you're at least live. Half the small things in life. That's a catapult. Oh yeah, welcome one and all. My name is Tavis as usual, and today we're painting a catapult. A sizable catapult. And now, for those who have no idea what this is, beyond the fact it's a battle mech, this is a model made by Matt Mason, also known as Soligy, on My Mini Factory. And it's just scaled up, because this is the regular tabletop scaling to begin with, and I just scaled it up in Shooter Box and printed it at 200%, 300%, I can't remember. A lot of percent. And oh dear Lord. Yeah, so for all intents and purposes, this thing is just a big mech. And I was like, I should paint this big mech, because I've been sitting on my shelf for 6+ months, I think, or something around there anyway. So I was like, why not paint it? It's a happy little mech. But then, of course, everything just went crazy. But for all intents and purposes, it is an interesting thing. At one point, I was intending to print a bunch more of these and make a big scale mech game. Maybe might be still happening at some point, but not right now. And I was like, so I should paint this mech. How should I paint this mech? What should I paint it as? And as some people know, I am a Rasselhaugian through and through. There's not looking at Rasselhaugian color schemes. There aren't that many of them, because Rasselhaug was like a blip in space compared to all other nations. But you have the Freemen, which are basically painted like Skyline. You have the Drakens, Drakens, Drakarna, and they're just blue with red lines on them. That's not particularly fun. And I'm not going to paint a Skyline on this. That is going way beyond my capabilities. And then you have the first of Tyr, which are basically has a golden helmet painted on them. It was the company adopted by the MVO game when they gave Russell Haig their pin scheme. So yeah, that's one up. But you have the Gunsbergs, the Gunsbergians, and their pin scheme is grey, blue, with gold trim. I was like, that is nice. We can do that. So that's what we're going to do. The Gunsbergs Eagles. If I don't remember incorrectly. And let me to bring up the data on them. Yes. Yes, the Gunsberg Eagles from the planet of Gunsberg. Not much more to say about that, to be honest. Really not much more to be said about that. They're interesting. So we're going to go in hard with the blue and the greys now. And for blue, we're using Viking blue, fitting enough, because thematically correct. And for the grey, we're using Necromancer Cloak as a base, because this grey is a bit too pale. You're going to pale it up later, but you're going to need some darker base first. So that's where we start with the grey. I mean, it's basically just... Let's test it a bit. So basically, it is these parts. And one thing to note is because this is incredibly soft. I mean, the details on the make are so soft because it's scaled up from a scale they're not supposed to be. And a model this size usually would be expected to have a bit more detail on it. This one don't, because it's not designed for this scale. This scale is a... It's not going to take one of those low-res JPEG images and just blow them up on your copying machine, and sooner or later you start losing detail. I just point it out because some people might think that this is Matt's work not being up to par, but that guy does a fantastic job of giving us a secondary source of mech. I mean, I'm not saying you shouldn't get the official mechs, because the official mechs are great. I'm just saying that sometimes some mechs have not been made yet. That's always been an issue. And well, Mason does some of these more odd mechs that you might not see from Piranha games anytime soon. Like the Hollander. I keep harping on about the Hollander, but I think it's such an adorable idea of this all or nothing mech. Because the Hollander is a walking artillery platform, or well, direct fire platform. It is a mech that has no armor, no real secondary weapons, but it carries a huge gun. With a tiny mech. Tiny mech carrying huge gun. It is fun. It is about as adorable as it sounds. So yeah, this is going to take some time. And by some time, I mean a lot of time. And by a lot of time, I mean a lot of time. Because it's a lot of mech. A lot of mech. Might take a break at one point or another, depending on how much time it actually takes. I don't know. Do you know? Is there ad support on these things? I don't know. Doesn't really matter to me because I'm not a partner, but it's supposed to be interesting to know. Because, you know, life is interesting. I'm gonna go through so much paint for this one. I don't like painting big models in reality. It's financially not viable. Look at the price of paints anyway these days. But again, it is what it is. But yeah, as you can see, it's pretty soft in the details, and I wish it weren't, but it is. I have a different model from Cambody, which is a large scale kit. You've seen it a few times. It's also a catapult, so I printed this one because it was fun to have 3 sizes of catapults sitting around. But it's huge. It needs spray cans to be painted, or an airbrush, because it's huge. Anyway, that one has way more detail because it's designed to be printed as a large scale model, more akin to a model kit model. Now I'm not sure what scale it will be, because again, mech scales are funny, and by funny I mean annoying. But I mean, it is what it is. You can't do much about it. I'm gonna drop this sooner or later. Not because I want to, but because I'm clumsy. So if you see me dropping this and breaking it, then know that that is not unexpected. Unwanted, but not unexpected. So I mean, it is what it is, isn't it? Now, I don't know if these sort of videos do well. I have literally no idea. For a lot of reasons. But I'm slightly better at this kind of thing than I am this well-structured video. Because, well, I used a bit of radio once 100 years ago. And that's more my jam. Talking. Shutterbox radio. Both while I was in school and then a short stint while internet radio was still a thing. Do you remember those days? Do anyone apart from me remember those days when internet radio was a thing? It was the proto-life of podcasts, but they were not called podcasts. They're still harkening back to the whole radio thing. Now, do we paint these grey or not? That's a good question. I think we are. If we can finally put the grey. There's the grey. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm forgetful, but I am slightly forgetful. So yeah, I think we should paint this part too, just to sort of bring everything together and not having to worry about that later. Because that is still technically part of the arm, isn't it? I mean, trying to figure out what part is shoulder and what is not on the catapult is interesting. Now, this is one of my favorite mechs, the catapult. I don't know why I like it, but it's the sort of wonderful absurdity of the design. I mean, it's not gender absurd, and I know they fixed a lot of the design of the gender, but the gender is probably one of the worst designs. I love it, but its design is absolutely crap. See, like that. Ta-da! We now have the beginnings of a mech. And while the upper part is dry, we paint the lower part. And if you want to look what we're going for on Unit Color Compendium on the internet, we have the Gunsberg Eagles, and you can look what we are aiming for looks-wise. Not particularly advanced, but I mean, I like it. And there's something with the whole. We're going to darken this blue later on, because this seems a bit too blue now, but no, it's okay. in a lot of ways, I think the MechWarrior Battletech series has come to terms with that. They are 80s sci-fi. They are prime 80s sci-fi. They're about as much 80s sci-fi as 80s sci-fi get. And I'm not going to pretend that there's not issues with Battletech. There are a lot of issues. A lot of things have not aged well. Oh yeah. I mean, from the basic casual racism to depiction of minorities to, well, a lot of things. But at the same time, I like the setting in its absurdness. Because it is absurd. It is stupid in the most adorable way. Not a good way, but an adorable way. Because it has this brow-held high innocence about it, where it's like, look, I did good. It's like, no, dear, you didn't, but you tried. It has a surprising amount of representation culture-wise, and not all of it is racist stereotypes, so that's kind of nice. But a lot of it is. I mean, just look at the entire House Liao and House Kurita to a lesser degree. There are issues there. A fair bit of issues. But at the same time, we have to accept that that is what things was back then. And, well, all we can do is try to improve on it going forward. And seeing how Battletech is a franchise is about the size of a kiddie pool. Not big like that. It is a stable franchise, but it's not big. There is not going to be any massive upshots in this community per se. Also, some things here broke because, well, things didn't print properly this scale. That's why it's sort of bent, because I didn't hollow it out. I decided to try and print it solid, because that's fun. So yeah, this stage is the worst stage. And I can understand why people use an airbrush for this. I don't have an airbrush. I have a brush. That is, of course, in the air, but it's not an airbrush. I actually walked by a local hardware store yesterday while out looking for shoes and realized that they had a compressor, or a small compressor, about 600 Swedish crowns. Actually, it was like 700, but still, that's fairly good price for a that would be like $70. And it's not any no-name brand. It's fairly decent brand actually. So it's like, maybe I should pick that up. But and again, I have so much I want to pick up right now. I don't know. Stop that. I'm gonna have blue all over me. I'm gonna bring a bloody Smurf by the time this is over. But yeah, I love Ori Painter's paints, but Jesus Christ, sometimes they are not playing nice. Not playing nice at all. I don't even want to know how many layers of white and blue I'm going to apply to this before the shirt looks good. 75 perhaps. Probably. Maybe, probably, perhaps. I don't know. Do you know? I don't know. Gotta try to figure out how to do this, because this didn't work. I didn't get things set up the way they should. Still, this is the trial and error thing. Because I was like on Twitch, but painting things on Twitch, it's like, yep, it is a thing, but it's not a good thing, because you don't get promoted. There's no promotion going on. It's not. It's a fairly insular community, mostly of actual artists, people who do real art. I don't do real art. I paint miniatures, which of course is an art form in itself. And I sometimes kind of giggle when people in the modeling sphere be like, "Oh, I paint all these tiny details." I'm like, your details are bigger than my models. But I understand it too, because it took me many years to get even half decent at painting miniatures, so I understand them. It needs to be fun, how we all have perception issues. Now that thing is dry. But yeah, the Battletech community in general is a good one. Met a lot of nice people, but also met some people who cannot look at the historical context of Battletech and see their issues. And it's kind of sad, because you cannot need to do that, because there are issues. Lots of them, even. And what I mean by that is, as I said, it's a lot of casual racism, there's a lot of sexism, it's a lot of shit, basically, in it. And this was inherent from the time, because that was how you wrote back then, for some odd goddamn reason. I don't know. And we're not going to pretend like a lot of these guys were like doing it intentionally. They weren't. I think they're pretty much. I think they looked at what they did as very inclusive, because it is in a way. If you go by those days' standards, it's fairly inclusive. So it's not saying that they were doing this on purpose, being asshats, but that doesn't mean that you can't. You can do all the wrong things for the right reasons. It's possible. I do love though the weird Swedish. Swedish is fantastic. If you don't know what Swedish is, it is basically the language between it's a fusion of Swedish and Japanese that is never really detailed, and I'm sad over that. It's never detailed in the books, because I would love to see how that came to be. But think about it, it's not that strange, because Swedish has adopted English, French, German, a lot of languages, to just absorb parts of it. We are currently in the process of slowly absorbing Syrian languages and Arabic language tendencies. It's kind of fun. So I can see how this sort of became. If there was a conclave of people from Scandinavia that got isolated right next to a conclave of people from Japan, there would be a language merger. Absolutely, because that is how we work. We do that a lot. It's kind of fun. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, I would love to see what the combination was actually. What parts of the language got incorporated, well, and how. That would have been curious. Are you dry yet? No, you're still drying. Sorry, I mean, it's not much you can do about this. It has to dry before we do anything more to it. Because if I start painting the gray now, I'm going to put my fingers right in blue. And as I said, we're going to put blue all over the make. There's enough blue up at it as there is right now. So that's the thing. But yeah. Swedish. And it wouldn't be Swedenese, would it? It would be... It wouldn't actually matter, because if you take the Swedish root, we have svenska, japanska. Meaning that if you slice those, however you slice them, you're gonna end up with the same word anyway. So yeah, okay, kind of have to do the English version, because otherwise no one would know what the difference. Of course, I guess you could go by what the Japanese pronunciation of the Japanese language are. That would of course be a thing. I don't know, maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe I'm overthinking it. That does happen every now and then. So, yeah. Not much to do about that though. It's a weird thing. Let's put some more blue on the arms, shall we? Yeah, definitely gonna need at least 2 layers for this. Because it looks like poop. Notice it's coming along. Maybe 3 layers. I don't know. We'll see. Time will tell. Yeah. So yeah, I recently managed to buy some the loot boxes, I would say, not loot boxes, the mystery boxes. And it was one of these impulse purchases. Like I saw that a store that I usually buy from, Alpha Spel, had them in stock. I was like, maybe I should hold off a little. And I was like, no. They only have like 2 cases of them, and I need an entire case. So I'm going to just buy this. And I did. And now I'm going to have to eat noodles for the rest of the month. But it's worth it. Oh well. Worth it and worth it, but you know. From that point of view, it was okay. It brought happiness. You shouldn't underestimate things bringing happiness in these times. Because the world is bleak as is. So yeah, I bought those. Now they're out of stock. I don't know when they're going to get restocked. But they still carry about 300% more Battletech than any other stores I know. So that's okay. Yeah, pretty much have one store in entire Sweden that sells Battletech stuff. In case you're interested. So can you, like, if you want to understand how difficult it can be to get a hold of things in this hellhole. As it sits right now, we have one store that sells Battletech miniatures. Pretty more small local stores, but you never can find those. And I cannot say I do not have a single store that sells a pressure vessel for making a pressure pot, which I make because of resin reasons. But nope, no one sells those. I don't know why, but no one sells them, period. I think because we're advanced beyond those designs, practically, there's no paint guns that still use those. They all have that pressure part built in these days instead, which of course is very handy if you're painting, but for me, that's very impractical. See, look at that, it doesn't look blue now. Hallelujah. Yeah. That is what it is. Now, on the test stream yesterday, I thought I'd be joking about how I think that the best paint schemes there is are the Star League Defense Force. Because all their makes are green. Because the units use standard drab paint job when they're not specifically painted for a special environment. Because the Starlink Defense Force was a actual proper army and not what the heck everything's turned into after that. The Starlink Defense Force had very little humor in regards of how you paint your military vehicles. Their military vehicles actually look like military vehicles. Unlike most mercenary companies later on that are more like, well, pro wrestlers. Apart from the ones who actually are pro wrestlers. I'm pretty sure there are some that are actually pro wrestlers. It would make a lot of sense. But yeah, a lot of mercenary companies look more at home on the game world of Solaris 7 than they do on a battlefield. But I guess there's a point to that too. Marketing, if nothing else, is probably a lot easier when you have a easy to identify brand. I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe not. See, I almost dropped it. I just ate some paint. That is a bad idea. Don't do that. It's not good for your health. I mean, it's not necessarily bad either, but definitely not good for it. Because as far as I know, this paint is fairly toxic free. As toxic free as anything ever gets. But I still think it's a good idea to stay off the paint eating as much as you can. It is not part of a healthy diet. But you know, it is, again, what it is. Now some people might wonder, how did you manage to eat paint? I was like, I want to lick the brush and I had a bit more paint on it than I thought I would. There used to be this old thing we said that a true wargamer, again, gatekeeping, but still, it was a saying. A true wargamer knew his paint by taste. And considering some people are going to oil paints, I hope that is not true anymore. Because you should not eat oil paints. They are actually toxic. Like, properly toxic. Don't eat oil paints. I mean, you shouldn't eat acrylic paints either, but they're at least slightly healthier as a dietary option than your average oil paint. So, would you look at that? It looks like a mech. And everyone was impressed. So yeah, that is the core for the Gunsberg Eagles. We're just gonna let this dry for a little bit. Oh, did I rub off some paint? I did not rub off that much paint. Good. This was a brand new cutting mat like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. It is not anymore. It's kind of sad. But yeah, it is what it is. Meantime, I'll show you this. It's a bull. It's kind of fun. It's a Minoc from the Guardians of Labyrinth by Artisan Guild. Surprisingly large model for what it is, actually. Because I had a bit of resin left in my printer. I also have these adorable trolls. And these are wonderfully Bauer-esque. For those in the Nordic region, they are very reminiscent of the trolls from Drakar och Trudvang. But yeah, very nice. Pointy, lanky, angry, hairy trolls. Very big. I don't know if I compare them for it. That's a primary space marine. And this is a troll. Huge! Imagine what this would cost if we bought that from Games Workshop. They'd be like, hand over your firstborn and your left leg. Thank you. And people would be like, sure, sounds reasonable. I don't know why it would sound reasonable, but some people would probably say, oh, it sounds reasonable. is not reasonable. Nothing when it comes to Games Workshop is actually reasonable anymore. That's not true. The quality of the models are still excellent. It's just their... How should I put this? Their company. No companies are good. Technically not bad either, they just companies. The people in the company are good or bad. But yeah. So look at this. Wonderful elf. It's great. But yeah. Of course, 3D printing is equalizing that a bit. Because it's becoming a lot easier these days to produce good models. We don't need to sculpt them by hand anymore. Because that was always the advantage they had. They could do digital sculpting. They've done so for years. And they could then print those digital sculptures. And that was a massive advantage they had. Now, these days, not so much. Because these days, 3D printing are equalizing that to a certain degree. It's still not a great equalizer, but it's slightly better. Because at least now people have a chance. But with that said though, with that chance, there's still not much democracy in that market. Because no matter how you twist it, Games Workshop still owns their own shit. To a certain degree. That is why they don't call Space Marines anymore. Because they don't own Space Marines. The word, that is. It's way too generic and they were not fussed with it, so they don't own it. So they don't call them Space Marines anymore, because they can't protect that. They instead call them Adeptus Astartes, which is a completely made-up word that they can own. I can't even say I blame them for that, because the laws are weird in that regard. You kind of have to do this weird song and dance. But it's kind of stupid. It's not only kind of, it's really stupid in a lot of ways. And I think we need to, as a community of the world, actually look into if we can improve that instead. And I mean, instead companies are doing all they can to make it more difficult. Looking at you, Disney. Disney is probably the most egotistical company I've seen in a very long time. Now, of course, sure, they do sit on a asset portfolio that is worth billions. So I understand why they're being so annoying with the corporate thing, but at the same time, they are asshats. And not in any good way. They're asshats in a bad way. But I guess that happens when your entire company's financials rest on continuously owning shit you didn't make. Because pretty much what Disney does is they rely heavily on things that are on the royalty free, that are in the commons, and they make stories out of that, and then they claim those stories as theirs. So anyone who even comes close to doing anything with something similar, I mean, they can't do shit about things like Hansel and Gretel and stuff. That is simply. But I really would if they could. But yeah, for example, Winnie the Pooh is now in the public domain. Not Disney's Winnie the Pooh, but Winnie the Pooh. Meaning that there is now nothing stopping anyone else to do something with Winnie the Pooh, as long as it's visually distinct from Disney's Winnie the Pooh, which is theoretically not that difficult, because the only thing that is even remotely unique with Disney's Winnie the Pooh is that he has a red shirt on. The other characters are a lot easier to distinguish, but on the other hand, a yellowish rabbit isn't exactly unique either. But yeah, so if you want to do your own Winnie the Pooh, you can. Same with Sherlock Holmes. No one can stop you from making a Sherlock Holmes thing. Well, it's a bit more complicated with Sherlock Holmes because the state owns some things. Not everything, but some things. And there's a lot of other writers who's been involved in that project too. Muddying the water, as they say. But for all intents and purposes, you could probably get away with it if you pick the right stories and the right thing. Now, I'm not against copyright. Copyright is a good thing, but it can be abused. I mean, as a Bad Luck fan, you're probably familiar with the Unseen and the Mac, the remix and the re-seen mix and all of that. And while that's technically not a copyright thing, because it's not, it's a licensing thing, it still falls in the same realm. It still touches the same issues, sort of. For those unaware, there was a time-saving thing done by FASA, the company that produced Battletech from the beginning, and well, they produced Battle Droids, but that got nixed rather quickly because Droid, not Android, but just a droid, is apparently something that Lucasfilm owns. It means that technically Disney owns that too now. Disney owns everything. Whatever company manages to buy Disney will literally own everything. Not kidding. If a company manages to buy Disney at some point, which they will, because money loves money. I mean, I also love money, but I don't have any money, so that's okay. Yeah. So yeah, there was interesting licensing deal going on there, where one company had licensed designs from across, and from another company the same designs have been licensed to FASA for different things, and the wording was a bit different, but in the end, the company name Harmony Gold was really, really annoying. And not in a good way annoying. They were just annoying. So look at that, we have a leg. You shouldn't underestimate having a leg on your mech. Giving your mech a leg up is always a good thing. Because a legged mech is an unhappy mech. And soon to be also a very unhappy pilot. because that's a thing. But can you imagine riding in a 12-meter tall walking tank and just bouncing around on a bad leg actuator? That would be hilarious. And by hilarious, I mean horrifying. I mean that actually. I think that would be rather horrifying actually. Oh, we haven't been public. Is anyone watching this? No. There isn't. Well, I'm gonna try something a bit interesting. I think